Hey, what's up guys? Today Marin is launching what is potentially the most fun e-bike to hit the market yet. This is the Rift Zone E-Lite, a Bosch SX powered 140, 150 29er. Stay tuned to learn a little bit about it and find out how it's performed so far in this first ride report on loamwolf.com. Let's go. Yes, this is the new Rift Zone E-Lite, a Bosch SX powered version of their original made-for-fun Rift Zone trail bike. It's got a 140mm multi-track single pivot rear end paired with a 150mm fork and a pair of 29-inch wheels as standard. It's made with a Series 4 aluminium frame, which is designed to have plenty of room inside the front triangle for a decent sized water bottle or the Bosch PowerMore range extender. And they've also gone for a removable battery design, meaning you can slide the 400 watt-hour Bosch battery out of that down tube, meaning that you can potentially buy a spare battery to extend your rides even further. Of course, the Bosch SX system weighs in at around about 2 kilograms and offers 55 Newton meters of torque with up to 600 watts peak power if you're able to spin your legs fast enough. And because of the reduced weight of that motor system and the battery, you're able to get builds down to around about the 20.5 kilo or 45 pound or so range, which is certainly impressive for an aluminium e-bike. Looking at the geometry, Marin really wanted to retain the playful nature of the original Rift Zone analog mountain bike, and so didn't go crazy long or slack with the numbers on this Rift Zone E-Lite. There's a 65-degree head tube angle, which is adjustable with an optional headset cup by plus or minus 0.5 degrees or so, meaning you can make it a little bit slacker, a little bit steeper, depending on the kind of terrain you're wanting to ride. Across the size range, you get the same roughly 77-degree effective seat tube angle, as well as a 440mm rear end and 32mm bottom bracket drop. The size range goes from a small to an extra large, spanning a decent reach range, with the large coming in at around about 485mm reach. Stack heights are not super tall across the range, so for riders looking for a really nice and high front end, you're going to want to spec a nice high-rise bar, but certainly with the 25 or so mil rise bar that's spec'd as standard, the body position is being fairly comfortable. Marin's going to be coming to market with 3 different build levels in the Rift Zone E-Lite, from the one at $4,799 up to the XR that we tested here, which retails for $6,999. Of course, euro and pound pricing will vary slightly, so be sure to check the Marin website to see how the pricing stacks up in your region. As is typical for Marin, with the XR build, they've not gone crazy with the build kit, still wanting to keep a nice kind of attainable, affordable price overall in the grand scheme of things. So they've really put the attention to detail and the focus on the parts that really matter and make a difference to the overall performance, and shaved a little bit of cost here and there in some other areas just to make the price point not go sky high. You've got a Fox Performance Elite suspension package with a 36 up front and the Flow X rear shock, which is custom tuned to the frame. You've got a GXT type drivetrain on there, a set of Magura MT7 brakes, which are really nice to see on a build like this, a P&W dropper post, and running out the build is a set of Marin own brand wheels with a pair of interesting Maxxis tyres with a Minion DHF in the front and a Forecaster in the rear, both in the Exo Plus casings. Enough about the build specs and the details of the Marin Rift Zone E-Lite. Let's talk about the most important thing. How has this performed in its first ride review? Oh. Oh. Ah. For this first ride review, I've only managed to log a single ride on the size medium of the Rift Zone E-Lite, which is a little bit smaller than I'd have loved it to be, but actually, when you think about the general philosophy of this bike, the made-for-fun nature, it kind of makes sense, and at a 465mm reach, it definitely wasn't a horrible fit. I'd probably fitted a slightly higher rise bar if it was me, but that 465mm reach definitely wasn't completely outside of my comfortable zone, and it's safe to say it's been a whole lot of fun to test so far. On the way up the hill, you've got that Bosch SX motor, which is a solid performer, especially if you're able to get down into a slightly easier gear than you might be accustomed to and spin your legs. It definitely delivers solid power. It gives reasonable range. I mean, the 400 watt-hour battery is always going to have its limits, especially if you try to climb up some really steep stuff. But it definitely, overall provides a solid user experience, and it's definitely one of my favorite systems in the SL, midweight, whatever you want to call it, category. The Marin that's built around it for the climbs is definitely no slouch either. It's got a solid pedaling platform, it's definitely a fairly efficient machine, and really, I guess it helps to prolong the battery life of that Bosch SX system. The slightly shorter rear end than you'll see on most bikes in the market with the SX system, it definitely pays its dividends on the way down the hill, but it means that on the absolute steepest bits of climb, you can struggle just a small amount with getting enough weight onto that front wheel. You end up in a little bit of a situation where you're trying to balance the traction to the rear wheel, but keep the front wheel planted and pointed in the right direction. So it maybe isn't going to be the ultimate bike for riders looking to climb up the absolute steepest terrain, but if you had a slightly lower front end, if you're able to just manage that traction, and if you're able just to stay seated and use that fairly well centered 77-degree effective seat tube angle seating position, then it's by no means a bike that is a horrible machine to climb. Just maybe takes a little bit more of an active approach if you're just trying to winch yourself up the absolute steepest and nastiest e-bike only climbs. When it came to the way down the hill, this Rift Zone E-Lite was a huge amount of fun. It definitely provides that kind of classic signature poppy and playful feel that the original Rift Zone provided, but obviously with that assisted package, which just helps keep everything a little bit more planted and ready for some abuse and attacking the trail. The overall geometry package is really nicely balanced, I'd say, for a slightly more playfully minded e-bike. The 440mm rear end is a treat to see and really makes a difference to the agility of the bike overall. And it means that it really just doesn't feel that much E on the way down the hill. You obviously get the assistance and a slightly heavier weight overall, but this is definitely a super poppy and playful e-bike, and it's really the made-for-fun character that Marin tries to instill with the Rift Zone E-Lite really comes through, and yeah, it's definitely a huge amount of fun. When it comes to the really rough and rowdy terrain, it's maybe not the easiest bike to ride, but actually it provides a fairly well-balanced handling package overall. It definitely doesn't feel like you're going to overwhelm the suspension package all that easily, and yeah, it's definitely not held me back at all attacking some of the rough and rowdy trails in South Wales where I tested it. Of course, if you're looking for a full-on enduro e-bike, then something like the Alpine Trail E is going to be the better option. But in the overall kind of all-mountain category, where you're going to be looking to cover some ground and then just have a really nice poppy, playful time on the way down the hill, the Rift Zone E-Lite is going to rank highly there. And the build spec overall on this has been an absolute treat. Things like the Magura brakes are an absolute pleasure. GXT-type transmission is an absolute solid performer. And the suspension package, that tuned rear shock, the Float X, and the 36 have been an absolute treat to ride too. Fair enough, at $6,999, it's not a cheap bike by any means, but in terms of Bosch SX equipped bikes, it's definitely one of the cheaper ones with such a high quality spec, and the overall attention to detail and the finish quality feels high enough to go a long way to justifying that price, especially when you consider the dealer support that you get with a Marin bike. Overall, this has been a super fun bike to test for sure, and I'm excited to keep on testing it for a long-term review coming to the site in the coming months. Thank you very much for watching. Give us a like if you've enjoyed this video. Leave us a comment, let us know, is this a bike that's on your radar now? Is this made for fun attitude speak to you? Do let us know in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more awesome content on awesome bikes like the Marin Rift Zone E-Lite. Thank you for watching. Catch you out on the trails.